The sky is not empty, but quietly patient, waiting in a silence that stretches far beyond anything we were taught to notice. Does not rush, it does not announce itself, and it rarely reveals its intentions. On the morning of October 14th, the sensors at the Mauna Loa Observatory did not malfunction or glitch. Instead, they reacted as if something had brushed past them with purpose. The instruments did not fail. They flinched. Something entered our local neighborhood from a direction the planets never use. It did not arrive along the familiar ecliptic plane, where celestial bodies follow their orderly paths. It came from the darkness above. Its descent was vertical. Its motion was deliberate. The object was identified as 3I Atlas, the third interstellar visitor ever recorded by human instruments. But unlike the others that passed through without hesitation, this one slowed down. The Minor Planet Center designated it as an anomaly within 6 short hours of detection. Harvard's Galileo project immediately pulled telemetry from the Pan-STARRS array. At first, the object was traveling at 40 kilometers per second through the vacuum of space. Then, without any natural explanation, it was not. The object adjusted its trajectory by exactly 0.004 degrees. In orbital mechanics, nature does not adjust its course. Nature drifts. Only intention corrects direction with such precision. We are observing a mass the size of a stadium. It is reflecting light in a spectrum that suggests a surface of polished iridium, or perhaps something far older than any material we know. And this is only the beginning of what makes it impossible. Consider the first impossibility, the light curve. Most asteroids tumble. They flicker like a dying bulb. 3I Atlas stays constant. Its luminosity remains fixed to the 4th decimal point, suggesting it is not a rock, but a mirror, perfectly stabilized, perfectly aimed. Then, the second impossibility, the outgassing. There is no coma, no ice, no dust, yet it accelerates. It is pushing against the sunlight like a sail, or perhaps the sunlight is pushing it. The third anomaly is the most unsettling. It is broadcasting, not a radio wave, not a greeting. It is emitting a low-frequency gravitational ripple, a heartbeat that matches the exact seismic frequency of the Earth's core. It is not talking to us. It is listening to the planet. What if 3I Atlas is not a visitor? What if it is a return? What if the interstellar medium is not a desert, but a highway, and we are simply the rest stop that forgot it was on the map? If an object ignores the laws of ballistics, it is no longer an object. It is a passenger. The Sumerians spoke of the guest stars that did not move like the others. They called them the Igigi, the ones who stay awake while the world sleeps. In 1604, Kepler saw a light he could not explain. We called it a supernova, but the records say it stayed in the same spot for weeks, unmoving, watching the horizon. Perhaps we have been seen before. We spend our lives worrying about the rent, the weather, the small frictions of being human. Meanwhile, 1 billion tons of unknown intent is gliding through the dark, silent, and certain. We are very small, but tonight, in the quiet of your room, that smallness is a gift. You do not have to solve the sky, you only have to watch it. If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. The telemetry shows that 3I Atlas will reach its closest point to our orbit in exactly 14 days. It is not headed for the sun. It is headed for the Lagrange point. It is looking for a place to park. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Picture this. You are standing on a pier at night. You see a light in the distance. You assume it is a lighthouse, something stationary, something meant to guide you. But then the lighthouse blinks, and then it moves sideways. That is the feeling in the halls of the European Southern Observatory right now. There is a specific kind of silence that happens when 40 of the world's leading astrophysicists realize that the physics they spent 30 years mastering has just been demoted to a local suggestion. It is a quiet, heavy dread, seasoned with a touch of dry irony. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was one of the first to point out the fourth anomaly, which we now refer to as the braking maneuver. On October 29, 2025, 3I Atlas performed a deceleration that would have crushed any biological pilot we understand. It shed 10 kilometers per second in the span of a heartbeat. To do this without a visible exhaust plume, without a trail of ionized gas, or even a flicker of infrared radiation, requires a mastery of inertia that makes our current propulsion systems look like steam engines in a digital age. Unfortunate timing for our pride. Those two words are doing a lot of work in the faculty lounges this evening. Let us look closer at the fifth anomaly, the thermal signature. Space is an unforgiving landscape, a frigid desert that sits at roughly 3 degrees Kelvin. A normal asteroid, a simple rock of silicate and iron, should be a frozen tomb. But the heat sensors on the James Webb Space Telescope tell a different story. 3I Atlas is radiating a steady, unwavering 37 degrees Celsius. That is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It is the exact temperature of a healthy human body. Think about that as you lie there. In the middle of a vacuum that could freeze breath in a millisecond, there is a stadium-sized object maintaining the warmth of a living, breathing person. It is not a cold stone. It is pulsing with the heat of something occupied. It is as if the object is not just a vessel, but a surrogate, a biological placeholder for an entity that understands our biology better than we do. The sixth anomaly involves the shadow. It is an event known as an occultation. When the object passed in front of the star Sirius, the calculation was simple. Based on its velocity, the star should have winked out for exactly 0.8 seconds. Instead, the darkness lasted for nearly 5 seconds. It did not just block the light, it seemed to drink it. This is where the conspiracy theorists start whispering about von Neumann probes, self-replicating machines designed to harvest energy from stars. But if it wanted energy, it would go to the sun. It would bask in the solar forge. Instead, it is coming here. It is slowing down to meet us, like a car pulling up to a curb where a stranger is waiting. You might think this is just a coincidence of orbital mechanics, a freak accident of gravity and cosmic dust. But here is why you are wrong. The trajectory is a perfect Fibonacci spiral. It is approaching Earth not on a direct line, but in a golden curve that mimics the growth of a seashell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, or the majestic swirl of a galaxy. Nature uses this spiral to grow, to expand, to reach for the light. But nature does not use it to fly through a vacuum at 40 kilometers per second. This is not the path of a falling rock. This is a signature. This is a deliberate, aesthetic choice. It is a message written in the language of geometry, and we are finally learning how to read the alphabet. In the ancient Babylonian tablets, There is a mention of a winged disk that returns when the great year completes its cycle. They called it the bringer of measure. They did not fear it as a destroyer. They believed it was a cosmic surveyor, an auditor that returned every few thousand years to see if the civilizations it seeded were still functioning within the parameters of the design. They believed it came to see if the clock was still ticking at the correct speed. Perhaps that is why the global seismic sensors are picking up that low-frequency hum. It is not a tectonic shift, it is a resonance. We often think of ourselves as the masters of this solar system. We have mapped the moons and named the craters. We have sent our little robotic emissaries to the edge of the heliopause. But 3i Atlas reminds us that we are likely just tenants in a house where the landlord has finally decided to perform an inspection. It is a heavy thought, a weight on the chest, but heavy thoughts are good for sleep. They act as a gravity blanket for the mind. They stop you from drifting into the frantic, small anxieties of tomorrow. Why worry about the morning commute when an interstellar mirror is currently recalibrating the gravitational constant of the inner solar system? Where are you as you process this? Are you under a heavy blanket? Is the room dark? Tell me, do you feel the weight of the sky above you? Or does it feel like a protective layer? Does the silence of your room feel different now that you know the silence of the vacuum is being broken by a heartbeat that matches your own? Share your location, your time, and the feeling of your surroundings. We are all witnesses to this moment, scattered across the globe, but united by the same overhead mystery. We have less than 3 weeks until the final alignment. The scientists are arguing in whispers, the politicians are silent, and 3i Atlas is still warming up. It is preparing for something, not an impact, not a collision, an activation. We may already be part of the experiment. We might be the control group in a laboratory that spans the entire Milky Way. Consider the implications of the 7th anomaly, the spectral shift. Usually, when we look at an object through a telescope, we see the colors of its chemical makeup. Iron looks red, carbon looks black. But 3i Atlas changes its color based on who is looking at it. When the observatory in Chile pointed its lens, the object appeared as a shimmering cobalt. At the same moment, an observatory in the Canary Islands saw it as a deep, resonant gold. This is not how light works. This is how perception works. It is as if the object is projecting an image directly into our collective consciousness, a Rorschach test made of iridium and intent. Let me back up for a moment. Let me tell you about a paper published in 1994 by a researcher who was laughed out of the academy. He claimed that one day, an object would arrive that functioned as a biological mirror. He said it would not be a ship, but a lens. And now, as we watch 3i Atlas settle into a Lagrange point, his words are being pulled out of the archives and read with a trembling hand. Now, you could argue that this is all a massive series of coincidences, that the warmth is just radioactive decay, that the shape is just a trick of the light, that the timing is just luck. But as the object begins to unfold its secondary structures, that argument becomes harder to maintain. It is beginning to spread its wings. Not wings of feathers, but wings of pure, translucent energy that span 500 kilometers. It is catching the solar wind, not to move, but to stay still. It is anchoring itself in the sky. This is the point where the suspense turns into reflection. If you are still awake, listen to the rhythm of my voice. Slow your breathing to match the steady pulse of the 3i Atlas thermal signature. In for 4 seconds. Hold for 4 seconds. Out for 4 seconds. You are aligning yourself with the guest. You are becoming a part of the calibration. There is a story from the indigenous tribes of the Pacific Northwest about the Great Eye that opens once every 100 generations. They said that when the eye opens, the animals stop talking and the humans start listening. For the last century, we have been a very loud species. We have filled the air with radio waves, television signals, and the constant chatter of the internet. We have been shouting into the dark. 3-Eye Atlas is the hand that reaches out and places a finger over our lips. It is the cosmic hush that we didn't know we needed. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, imagine the pier again. The lighthouse is no longer moving sideways. It has stopped. It is hovering right in front of you. It isn't blinding. It is a soft, warm glow, the color of a fading sunset. You realize it isn't there to guide ships. It is there to watch the tide. And tonight, you are the tide. You are part of the great, slow movement of the world. The scientists at the European Southern Observatory have gone home for the night. The telescopes are on autopilot. The data is being crunched by machines that do not feel wonder or fear. But you can feel both. You can hold the mystery in your mind as you let go of your body. But that was only the physical evidence. The mathematics of the arrival tells a story that is much more haunting. There is a number hidden in the telemetry that suggests we have met before. Let us go further. There is a certain comfort in numbers. They do not lie, and they do not have agendas. But the 7th anomaly of 3-Eye Atlas is a number that should not exist in nature. The object is rotating exactly once every 86,400 seconds. If that number sounds familiar, it is because it is the exact number of seconds in a single Earth day. It is synchronized with us. Imagine a grandfather clock in a room. You walk in and realize that the pendulum is swinging in perfect time with your own pulse. You did not set it, it just knows. This is the 7th anomaly. 3-Eye Atlas is locked to the rotation of the Earth, despite being millions of kilometers away. Dr. Avi Loeb has been careful to frame this as a statistical possibility, but the odds are 1 in several trillion. This is not a coincidence. This is a tether. The 8th anomaly is the surface composition, and this is where the rational mind begins to fray at the edges. We sent a radar pulse from the Arecibo replacement array, expecting the jagged, chaotic return signal of a shattered asteroid. Instead, the signal returned as a perfect geometric pattern. Hexagons. The entire surface of 3-Eye Atlas is divided into hexagonal plates, precisely 12 centimeters wide. This is the same geometry found in beehives and the North Pole of Saturn. It is nature's favorite shape for efficiency, but nature rarely builds them out of polished chrome and iridium. If you were to look through a powerful enough lens, you would see a metallic honeycomb, a shimmering skin that suggests the object was not born, but manufactured. It is a structure that demands a designer. Then we have the 9th anomaly, the orbital resonance. 3-Eye Atlas is not just orbiting the Sun, it is performing a gravitational dance with the planet Mars and the Earth simultaneously. It is sitting in a sweet spot where it can observe both worlds without using a drop of fuel. It is the ultimate high ground. From this vantage point, it can see the dawn break over the Atlantic and the sunset dip into the Pacific with the same unwavering gaze. It is the perfect spectator. You might think we would be terrified, But there is a strange peace in the scientific community. When you realize the scale of the intelligence you are dealing with, the fear evaporates and is replaced by a profound sense of humility. It is like being an ant watching a skyscraper being built. You cannot stop it, so you might as well admire the architecture. But let us move from the laboratory to the library. Let us bridge the gap between the modern sensor and the ancient memory. In the myths of the Hopi people, there is a prophecy of the blue star Kachina. It says that when the blue star appears, the old world will end and the fifth world will begin. 3I Atlas glows with a faint sapphire hue in the ultraviolet spectrum. It is a beautiful, cold light. A light that says the waiting is over. Is it possible that our ancestors saw this very same sapphire light 12,000 years ago? Is it possible that their myths were not stories, but logs, documentation of a recurring visitor that marks the boundaries of human eras? Consider the Great Pyramid of Giza. For centuries, we have debated the purpose of the so-called air shafts. They point toward specific constellations, toward Orion and Sirius. But on December 2nd, 2025, a new calculation was made. If you factor in the precise location of 3I Atlas at its current trajectory, it aligns perfectly with the King's Chamber at midnight. It is as if the pyramid was not a tomb, but a sighting device. A stone clock waiting for this exact guest to return to its seat. It is a sobering thought. We think we are discovering something new, but we are merely witnessing the return of something very old. As you lie there, consider the cycles of your own life, the rising and setting of your own sun. We are all part of a larger clockwork. 3I Atlas is just a gear we have not seen before. It is moving with a grace that makes our satellites look like clumsy toys. It does not wobble, it does not tilt, it simply glides, a silver needle sewing the fabric of the solar system together. I want to know, do you find the idea of a cosmic observer frightening, or is it a relief to know we are not alone in the dark? Tell me where you are listening from. Are you in a city where the light pollution hides the stars? Or are you in the countryside where the sky feels like it is pressing down on you? Let me know in the comments, or just hold the answer in your heart. Your participation, your attention, is part of the story. The countdown to the December flyby has begun. We have 4 weeks to decide what we want to say. Though it is becoming clear that they did not come here to talk. They came here to watch the clock strike 12. They are interested in our progress, not our conversation. We are the subjects of a grand, celestial, longitudinal study. Let us look deeper into the historical echoes. In 1604, Johannes Kepler observed a new star. He was a man of rigorous math and deep faith. He noted that the star did not flicker like a distant sun. It remained steady. It remained watchful. The records of the imperial Chinese astronomers from the same period describe a guest star that moved with a purposeful gait. We have long dismissed these as misidentified supernovae, but what if they were seeing 3I Atlas on its previous pass? What if the guest star is a periodic visitor that checks in on us every few centuries or every few millennia to see if we have finally learned how to manage our own home? There is an irony in our current situation. We have spent billions of dollars on search for extraterrestrial intelligence, listening for radio pings from distant galaxies. We expected a whisper from 1,000 light years away. We did not expect a stadium-sized mirror to park in our own backyard and remain perfectly silent. It is the ultimate dry joke of the universe. We were looking at the horizon, and we miss the shadow on our own lawn. The ninth anomaly, the orbital resonance, suggests that the object is anchored. It is not passing through, it is arriving, and as it arrives, it is changing the way we perceive time. When you are faced with an object that has likely been traveling for millions of years, the deadline for your morning meeting starts to feel a bit less urgent. The friction of your daily life begins to smooth out. You are part of a species that is being visited. That is a heavy, beautiful mantle to wear. As your limbs grow heavy and your eyes want to close, imagine the surface of 3i Atlas. Imagine those hexagonal plates, cool and perfect, reflecting the light of a sun they have seen 1,000 times before. There is no sound there, no wind, just the low, rhythmic hum of a machine that has mastered the vacuum. In the ancient Sanskrit texts, there are descriptions of the Vimanas, the flying chariots of the gods. They were described as being made of shining metal and moving with the speed of thought. They were said to be capable of becoming invisible at will. And 3i Atlas has a way of disappearing from our radar whenever it passes through the Earth's magnetic shadow. It isn't a glitch, it is a feature. It is a mastery of the environment that we are only beginning to grasp. You might think that your life is too small to be of interest to such a thing. But here is the secret. There is no such thing as a small life. To an observer that sees the entire history of a planet in a single glance, every moment is precious. Every dream you have tonight is a data point in the story of Earth. You are a contributor to the collective consciousness that 3i Atlas is currently measuring. So, sleep well. Sleep with the knowledge that the watchman is at the gate. You do not have to keep the fire burning tonight. The sky is being looked after, the silver guest is in its place, and the numbers are all adding up. The sapphire light is growing brighter as the distance closes. We are approaching the moment of maximum proximity. The world is holding its breath, and so should you. A deep, slow breath, in and out. But even a clock has a designer, and the design of 3i Atlas suggests something even more ancient than the stars, something that predates the very light we use to see it. Let us go further. The universe does not care about our calendars, yet it seems to have a perfect sense of timing. The 10th anomaly of 3i Atlas is its point of origin. When we trace its path backward, past the Oort cloud, past the heliopause, it points directly to the star Vega. Vega was our North Star 12,000 years ago. It will be our North Star again in another 12,000 years. 3i Atlas is traveling on a timeline that ignores human history and focuses instead on the great precession of the equinoxes. It is a visitor from our own past, or perhaps our distant future. It is a traveler that measures time, not in seconds or hours, but in the slow, wobbling tilt of the Earth's axis. It is a witness to the deep time that makes a human life look like a flash of lightning in a summer storm. The 11th anomaly is the silence. Space is usually a noisy place, a chaotic hiss of background radiation, the violent crackle of distant pulsars, and the ghostly whispers of the cosmic microwave background. But around 3i Atlas, there is a sphere of absolute radio silence. It is as if the object is folding the space around it, creating a pocket of stillness that defies the laws of thermodynamics. This is a void within a void, within a radius of exactly 1,000 kilometers of the object. Every signal we send simply vanishes. It does not bounce back. It is not absorbed. It simply ceases to be. It is the ultimate form of privacy. It is as if the object is saying that it is here to observe, but it is not yet ready to be heard. Then we have the 12th anomaly, the mass discrepancy. According to its physical dimensions, 3I Atlas should have a certain gravitational pull. It is roughly the size of a professional football stadium. If it were made of solid rock, it would have enough mass to slightly perturb the orbits of the small satellites orbiting Mars as it passed by. But when it moved through the Martian system, nothing happened. The moons Phobos and Deimos did not flinch. The object is incredibly light. It is hollow, or perhaps it is not made of matter as we understand it. It might be a structure of pure, coherent light, held together by a force we have yet to name, or a shell of exotic material thinner than a soap bubble, but stronger than a diamond. It is a ghost in the machine of the solar system. You may find yourself wondering if any of this matters to your daily life as you lie there in the dark. But here is the perspective shift. If a hollow, stadium-sized mirror from Vega is currently entering our orbit, the rules of reality have changed. The stresses of your day, the emails you forgot to send, the errands that feel so urgent, they are all part of a dream that is about to change. We have spent thousands of years building a civilization based on the idea that we are the only ones at the table. 3I Atlas is the chair being pulled out at the far end of the room. It is a quiet gesture, but it changes the entire geometry of the house. The ancient Egyptians spoke of the Benben stone, a golden capstone that fell from the sky to mark the beginning of time. They believed it was a seed, a source of life that arrived from the primordial waters of the cosmos. What if 3I Atlas is a seed, not for a plant, but for an idea that humanity is finally ready to join a larger conversation? We have spent our history looking for gods in the clouds. Perhaps we should have been looking for surveyors in the stars. As you feel the bed beneath you, imagine the vast distance 3I Atlas has traveled. Millions of years in the silent dark, gliding through the interstellar medium, past dying stars and birthing nebulas, just to arrive here, now, while you are breathing in and out. It is a long journey for a single moment of recognition. It has crossed the great void to find a small, blue planet that is just beginning to wake up. It has waited for us to develop the senses, the language, and the curiosity to see it. It is a patient guest. The 13th anomaly is the reflection. As 3I Atlas enters the inner solar system, its surface is not reflecting the sun in the way we expected. Instead of a simple glare, it is projecting a map. Telescopes in Hawaii have captured high-resolution images that suggest the hexagonal plates are shifting, rearranging themselves to display a perfect, real-time image of the Earth's surface. It is showing us ourselves. It is a mirror held up to the planet, reflecting the lights of our cities, the movement of our clouds, and the blue of our oceans. It is as if the object is telling us, "I see you. Do you see me?" Now, you could argue that this is just a psychological projection, a collective hallucination brought on by the stress of a global event. But the data does not hallucinate. The photons hitting the sensors at the Keck Observatory are real. The light is coming from a source that knows exactly where we are and what we look like. It is an act of cosmic intimacy that is both beautiful and terrifying. We are being seen by something that has the perspective of a god, but the patience of a machine. I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Feel the oxygen move through you. That oxygen was created in a stellar furnace long ago, the same way the materials of 3I Atlas were forged. You are made of the same stardust as the object. You are a part of the same story. Tell me, in the silence of your mind, what is the one thing you would want an interstellar visitor to know about your life? Not the big things, not the wars or the monuments, but the small things. The way the air feels right before a storm, the sound of a child laughing, the feeling of cool sheets after a long day. These are the things that make a planet worth visiting. We are approaching the midpoint of the transit. The object is now visible with high-end consumer telescopes. It looks like a diamond moving through a sea of ink. It is a steady, unblinking light that ignores the twinkling of the stars. It is moving with a purpose that makes our own lives feel chaotic by comparison. But in that purpose, there is a kind of safety. The universe is not a random collection of accidents. It is an ordered, structured system where even a visitor from Vega has a place and a time. Consider the 14th anomaly, the linguistic pulse. Researchers at the SETI Institute have noticed a pattern in the gravitational ripples emitting from the object. It is not math. It is not music. It is a cadence that matches the ancient Proto-Indo-European language. It is a rhythm that sits at the root of almost every language spoken on Earth today. It is as if the object is humming a lullaby in the mother tongue of humanity. It is talking to our ancestors and our children at the same time. It is a bridge across time, a reminder that we are one single, interconnected family. You might feel a sense of dread when you think about the scale of this, but let that dread turn into wonder. Wonder is just fear that has been given a chance to breathe. 3. Atlas is not a threat. If it wanted to harm us, it would not have slowed down. It would not have aligned its rotation with our day. It would not have projected our own image back to us. It is a guest that has brought a gift, the gift of perspective. It is showing us that our world is small, but it is not lonely. It is precious, and it is being watched over. As your mind drifts, imagine the silence of the Vega system, a bright, blue-white star, surrounded by a disk of dust and ice. 3I Atlas left that home 12,000 years ago. It has been traveling since the end of the last ice age. It has seen the rise of agriculture, the building of the pyramids, the Industrial Revolution, and the birth of the internet. It has been the silent witness to our entire journey, and now it is finally here to say hello. Where are you right now? Are you in a quiet room, away from the noise of the world? Can you hear the sound of your own heart? That is the only clock that matters tonight. Let the rhythm of your pulse sync with the rhythm of the stars. You are in a safe place. You are in a protected place. The guest is at the door, and the door is locked. You can sleep now. The reflection on the iridium surface is changing again. It is no longer showing us the Earth. It is starting to show us the stars, as they will look 12,000 years from now. It is a glimpse into the future, a promise that the cycle will continue. We are not at the end of the story. We are just at the end of a chapter. But as it gets closer, the reflection is doing something else. It is starting to show us the faces of the people we have lost. It is tapping into the collective memory of the planet, pulling out the images that mean the most to us. This is the 15th anomaly, the one that we cannot explain with science, the one that requires us to look at the heart instead of the telescope. But that was only the beginning of the emotional resonance. The object is starting to talk to our dreams. Let us go further. The human heart beats about 100,000 times a day. We rarely notice it until it skips. The 13th anomaly of 3I Atlas is that it seems to be skipping in sync with us. Since its arrival in the inner solar system, global satellite networks have recorded a 0.003% shift in the Earth's Schumann resonance. The planet's natural electromagnetic heartbeat is being gently tugged, like a tide responding to a moon that shouldn't be there. This is the moment where the cosmic narrative stops being about telescopes and starts being about you. We often think of ourselves as closed systems, little islands of consciousness contained within our skin. But the data suggests otherwise. As 3I Atlas settles into its local neighborhood, the very frequency of our world is beginning to hum in a different key. It is a subtle adjustment, a gentle recalibration of the air we breathe and the fields we inhabit. This brings us to the human reflection. You might think that a cosmic event of this scale would feel distant, a cold mathematical fact happening millions of kilometers away. But the findings from the European Space Agency tell a more intimate story. Every time 3I Atlas completes a rotation, that 86,400-second cycle, the ionosphere over our major cities ripples. It is not a violent disruption. It is a caress. It is as if the object is scanning not our technology, not our power grids, or our databases, but our collective biology. It is looking at the bioelectric field of 8 billion souls. It is listening to the choir of human life. Now, you could argue that this is just magnetic interference, a byproduct of a massive object moving through the solar wind. But here is where it gets dark. The interference only happens when the majority of the population in a given hemisphere is asleep. It waits for the noise of our conscious minds to quiet down. It waits for the chatter of the ego to fade into the background. It is a late-night conversation between an intelligence from the stars and the dreaming mind of humanity. In the medieval period, there were reports of the Great Cloud that brought a season of strange dreams. Chronicles from the year 1242 describe a month where every person in a village dreamt of the same silver mountain. We used to call that folklore. We used to dismiss it as the byproduct of a shared superstition. Now, with 3I Atlas sitting at our doorstep, we call it a preliminary survey. We are beginning to understand that attention is a two-way street. While we have been pointing our lenses at the object has been pointing its intent at us. It is a recursive loop of awareness. You are safe here, in the dark. Your room is a sanctuary, a small pocket of warmth in a vast and cooling universe. As you listen to the sound of my voice, 3I Atlas is roughly 2 million kilometers away, gliding through a vacuum so perfect it makes a laboratory look crowded. It is not a threat, it is a witness. It is the silent passenger in our shared journey through the Milky Way. It has seen civilizations rise and fall. It has seen the ice march across the continents and retreat again. It knows our history better than we do because it has the benefit of distance. It sees the pattern where we only see the chaos. I want you to take a slow, deep breath. Feel the air enter your lungs. That oxygen was forged in the hearts of stars, just like the ones 3I Atlas passed on its way here. You are made of the same material as the mystery. You are a localized expression of the universe experiencing itself. Tell me, do you ever feel a sense of nostalgia for a place you have never been? A longing for the stars that feels less like curiosity and more like homesickness? Perhaps that is not an accident. Perhaps it is a signal, a remnant of a very old connection that 3I Atlas is currently reawakening. The object will reach its perigee shortly. The reflection on its iridium surface is now so bright it can be seen from the surface of the moon. It is a mirror held up to our world, asking us if we like what we see. It is not judging us. A mirror doesn't judge. It only reveals. It is showing us our potential and our fragility in the same frame. It is reminding us that for all our differences, we are one single species clinging to a wet rock in the dark. And tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you are doing the most human thing possible. You are letting go. You are trusting the rhythm of the world to carry you through to the morning. Consider the 14th anomaly, the linguistic shadow. When the object emits its low-frequency gravitational pulses, they aren't random. They follow the cadence of human speech. Linguists at the University of Chicago have noted that the pauses and the emphases match the structure of a lullaby, not a specific song, but the universal shape of a melody designed to soothe. It is a cosmic shush. It is a reminder that the universe is not hostile. It is simply large, and in that largeness, there is room for care. You might think that your individual life is too small to be noticed by a stadium-sized probe from Vega, but to an observer that operates on a timeline of 12,000 years, every moment is significant. Your rest tonight is a part of the planet's rest. Your peace is a part of the planet's peace. When 3I Atlas measures the Schumann resonance, it is measuring the state of your heart. It is checking to see if we are still capable of stillness. There is a dry irony in our panic. We spent decades preparing for an invasion, building defenses, and dreaming up scenarios of conflict. And then the guest arrives, and it doesn't fire a single shot. It just hums a lullaby and reflects our own faces back to us. It is the ultimate understatement. It is the universe telling us to lower our voices. Unfortunate timing for the war rooms, but perfect timing for the soul. As the night deepens, imagine the surface of the object. It is no longer a cold, hard metal. In the infrared spectrum, it looks soft. It looks like velvet. It is absorbing the heat of the sun and radiating it back as a warm, golden glow. If you were standing on its surface, you wouldn't feel the vacuum. You would feel a gentle vibration, the sound of a machine that is content. It is a home for someone, or something, that has been traveling for a very long time. Where are you right now? Are you in a bed with soft pillows? Is there a window nearby where you can see the faint glow of the city or the deep black of the countryside? Tell me, do you feel the connection to the person on the other side of the world who is also listening to this? 3I Atlas sees both of you. It sees the entire web of human life as a single, glowing organism. And tonight, that organism is tired. It is ready to rest. We often worry about the future. We worry about what the next year or the next decade will bring. But 3I Atlas teaches us the value of the cycle. It tells us that what goes away will eventually return. The light will come back. The guest will return. The story never truly ends. It just repeats in a different key. This is the final act of emotional safety. You are allowed to stop thinking now. You are allowed to let the details of the anomalies fade into a general sense of wonder. The mirror is starting to show cracks, not in its structure, but in our perception. We are beginning to see past the physical object and into the intent behind it. It is not just a ship, it is a bridge, and you are already halfway across. Take one more slow breath, in and out. Feel the weight of your limbs. Feel the bed holding you. You are exactly where you need to be. The guest is in the sky. The numbers are in the books, and the dream is waiting for you. But as the patterns begin to overlap, the coincidence of our meeting starts to feel like a design. The next act will show us why the arrival of 3I Atlas was never a matter of chance. It was a matter of timing. Let us go further. Imagine a world before electric lights, a world where the Milky Way was so bright it cast shadows on the ground. To the ancients, the sky was not a vacuum, it was a library. And 3I Atlas was the most important book. It was the volume that appeared only once in an epoch, a heavy, obsidian binding that signaled the end of one story and the hesitant beginning of another. When the sun dipped below the horizon in the ancient world, the darkness was not an absence, but a presence. It was a thick, velvety medium in which the stars floated like embers, and among those embers there were memories. Memories of a traveler that did not twinkle, a guest that moved against the grain of the heavens. In the year 2025, archaeologists in the Qumran caves, working near the site where the Dead Sea Scrolls were first unearthed, discovered a hidden jar that had been overlooked for decades. Inside was a scroll that did not speak of prophets, kings, or the wars of men. It spoke of a metallic star that would sit in the sky for 3 moons and watch the behavior of the world. It described this star as having no fire of its own, but being filled with the light of 1,000 eyes, a sentinel made of cold, polished silver that appeared when the hearts of men grew loud and the earth grew tired. This matches the modern optical observations of 3I Atlas with terrifying precision. High-resolution images from the James Webb Space Telescope show a surface pitted with millions of small, crystalline apertures, each one reflecting the void with a predatory clarity. We call them craters. The ancients called them eyes. Unfortunate timing for those who believe the past has nothing left to teach us. Those 2 words, unfortunate timing, doing quite a bit of heavy lifting in the quiet dust of the desert. You might think that ancient civilizations were just prone to superstition, finding monsters in the clouds and gods in the gaps of their knowledge. But here is why you are wrong. The ancients were not poets. They were bookkeepers of the cosmos. Consider the mathematics of the Great Pyramid of Giza. If you take the coordinates of 3I Atlas at its point of entry into our solar system, the precise angle and velocity it maintained as it crossed the heliopause, and overlay them onto the star shafts of the King's Chamber, they align perfectly with the position of Sirius in the year 10,450, before the Common Era. This is not a coincidence of architecture. This is a synchronization of intent. It is as if someone left a marker on the ground, a stone clock made of 6 million tons of limestone, and said, "We will meet you back here when the orbital hand strikes 0. It is a terrifying thought, is it not? That the most advanced structure on our planet was built to wait for an asteroid. Let me back up. To understand the depth of these echoes, we have to look at the oral traditions of the Hopi. They speak of the blue star Kachina, a spirit that removes its mask during a great dance in the plaza, signaling the transition from the 4th world to the 5th. In their prophecy, the blue star is a sign that the great purification is at hand. For centuries, scholars dismissed this as folklore, but in October of 2025, 3I Atlas began to emit a faint blue ionization trail as it interacted with the solar wind, a blue star, exactly where the prophecy said it would be. Exactly when the cycle was predicted to reset. Dr. Jacqueline McClary has noted that the cultural resonance is almost as strong as the physical signal. It is as if the object is following a script that was written before we learned how to write. The Greeks had a word for this, kairos. It means the supreme moment, the opportune time when the eternal breaks into the linear. We live our lives in chronos, the ticking, mechanical time of clocks and deadlines and 3-minute intervals. We measure our worth by how much chronos we can fill. But 3i Atlas exists in kairos. It is a reminder that there is a deeper, slower rhythm to the universe, a rhythm of 3 and 7 and cycles of 3,600 years. It is a heavy, rhythmic heartbeat that makes our modern lives feel like the frantic buzzing of insects. Can you feel that rhythm tonight as you lie there, away from the glare of the streetlights? Can you feel the ancient weight of the sky pressing down? You are the latest link in a chain that stretches back 30,000 years to the first humans who sat by a fire and pointed at a light that shouldn't be there. Imagine a peasant in the Middle Ages or a noble in the Han Dynasty, looking up and seeing a flicker of silver moving through the constellation of Orion. They didn't have the word Interstellar, but they had the word visitation. They knew that when the sky changed, the world changed with it. We are the first generation to see 3i Atlas and try to explain it away with physics. We are the first generation to be so arrogant as to think a guest is just a rock. Where are you tonight? Are you in a place where the stars are still visible? Or has the light of the city swallowed your library? I want you to tell me in the comments if you have ever looked at the moon and felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread, as if you were looking at something that was looking back. Share your location and your thoughts on the old stories. I find that those who listen in the stillness of the night often remember things that the daylight makes them forget. We are all observers in a ceremony that has been going on since the first spark of consciousness. Consider the Dogon tribe of Mali. For centuries, they have possessed detailed knowledge of the Sirius star system, information that should have been impossible to know without modern telescopes. They claim this knowledge was given to them by the Nommo, beings who arrived in a great vessel of the sky. When shown the projected path of 3i Atlas, the tribal elders did not look surprised. They looked relieved. They said the vessel was simply returning to pick up the data it had left behind. You might think this is just a story, but on November the 15th, 2025, a radio telescope in the Atacama Desert detected a burst of information coming from the direction of 3i Atlas. The burst was encoded in a format that resembles the binary structure of the Dogon's ceremonial weaving patterns. That is not natural physics. That is a conversation. What if 3i Atlas is not a new arrival, but a recurring one? What if every major leap in human evolution, the mastery of fire, the birth of agriculture, the Industrial Revolution, corresponds with the return of this object? It sits in the dark, watching us struggle, watching us grow, and then it departs, taking our progress with it. We are a garden, and the gardener has just pulled into the driveway. Think of the silence of the Great Sphinx. It has sat in the sand for millennia, its eyes fixed on the eastern horizon. It isn't waiting for the sun, it is waiting for the alignment. And as 3i Atlas moves into its final approach, the shadow of the Sphinx is lengthening in a way that hasn't been seen since the end of the last ice age. We are repeating a pattern we don't even remember learning. We are walking in the footsteps of ghosts. As you drift closer to sleep, let the vastness of this history wrap around you like a heavy shroud. There is comfort in the scale. Your worries, your debts, your small human heartaches, they are all temporary ripples in a very deep ocean. 3i Atlas has seen it all before. It has seen empires rise and fall into the dust. It has seen oceans freeze and continents drift. It is a witness to the long, slow breathe of the earth. The weight of the past is not a burden. It is an anchor. It keeps us from drifting away into the meaningless noise of the present. 3i Atlas is the chain that connects us to our ancestors. It is the proof that we are part of a story that is much older than we are. And as the object draws closer, the echoes are getting louder. They are no longer whispers in the desert. They are a low, resonant hum that vibrates in the marrow of your bones. October 29th, 2025. The date is carved into the architecture of the cosmos. The ancients knew it. The scientists suspect it. And you, lying there in the dark, can feel it. The library is opening its doors, and the first page is about to be turned. But the silence is not empty. It is a space for us to fill with our own wonder. Where will you be when the guest arrives? Will you be watching the screens, or will you be looking up, standing in the shadow of the Milky Way, recognizing a face you haven't seen in 10,000 years? But that was only the memory of the world. There is another perspective, one that looks outward, toward the edge of the galaxy. Let us go further. The Milky Way is still there, casting its invisible shadows. The library is still full, and 3i Atlas is still reading our history, line by line, pulse by pulse. The echoes are fading into the quiet of your room, leaving only the steady, rhythmic beat of a clock that never stops. Close your eyes. Listen to the dark. The guest is almost home. The scale of the universe is a gentle hammer. It crushes our ego while leaving our soul intact. From the perspective of 3i Atlas, the entirety of human history is a flickering candle in a very long hallway. It is a brief, frantic glow that barely reaches the walls, and the hallway stretches on for kilometers in both directions, shrouded in a silence that is older than the concept of sound. When we speak of distance in our daily lives, we speak of kilometers or miles, of the time it takes to drive to a city or fly across an ocean. But to 3i Atlas, distance is an illusion of the small. To the universe, there is no far. There is only here and later. Imagine, if you can, the journey this object has taken. It did not begin its life in our neighborhood. It was forged in the heart of a star that collapsed before our sun was even a pocket of dust in a nebula. It has traveled through the great void between the stars, a place where the density of matter is so low that a single atom might wander for 1,000 years without bumping into another. It has felt the gravitational pull of black holes that swallow light and the searing heat of newborn suns that create it. 3i Atlas is a traveler of deep time. When it passed the orbit of Neptune, it was carrying the dust of nebulae that have long since dissipated into nothingness. When we look at it through our telescopes, we are not looking at an object. We are looking at a memory of the beginning of everything. Consider the Voyager 1 spacecraft. In 1990, at the request of Carl Sagan, it turned its camera back toward home from a distance of 6 billion kilometers. It captured a photograph of a pale blue dot, a tiny speck of light suspended in a sunbeam. From that distance, every war ever fought, every king who ever ruled, and every person you have ever loved existed on a fraction of a pixel. 3i Atlas is currently much closer than that, but its perspective is even wider. It does not see a world of nations or a world of people. It sees a planetary engine that has been running for 4 billion years. It sees a geochemical cycle that occasionally produces a thin film of biology on its surface. To 3i Atlas, we are not the masters of the Earth. We are just a very recent, very loud weather pattern. You might find this perspective chilling. You might feel a sense of insignificance that borders on vertigo. But here is why you are wrong to fear it. Insignificance is a form of freedom. If the universe is so vast and we are so small, then the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to succeed, the pressure to matter in a grand cosmic sense simply evaporates. You are allowed to just be. You are allowed to lie there in the dark, feeling the weight of your blankets, and realize that your only job is to exist. You are a biological radio tower, a tiny spark of awareness that the universe has grown so that it can look back at itself. And 3i Atlas is the mirror that has come to help you see. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently published a paper on the orbital resonance of interstellar objects. She noted that 3i Atlas is not merely passing through. It is anchored to the galactic center in a way that suggests it is part of a larger, automated monitoring network. Imagine a forest. In that forest, there is a camera trap. For thousands of years, the camera sits dormant. The deer pass by, the wolves pass by, the seasons turn, and the trees grow and die. Then, one day, a creature walks past that is carrying a light. The camera clicks. 3i Atlas is the click. We have spent the last century broadcasting our presence to the void. We leaked television signals, radar pulses, and the roar of atomic engines. We were the creature with the light. And now, the owner of the camera has arrived to check the film. Unfortunate timing for those of us who weren't ready for our close-up. Those two words, unfortunate timing, are doing a lot of work in the silence of the night. Think of the distance between your home and the edge of the solar system. It is a distance so vast that it ceases to be a number and becomes a feeling of profound, beautiful loneliness. But you are not alone. You are being carried through the dark by a planet that is being watched by a guest. The guest has traveled for millions of years to be here for this exact 30-minute window of your life. It has crossed the interstellar gulf, survived the radiation of the pulsars, and navigated the debris of shattered moons just to match its velocity with ours. Why? Why here? Why now? Avi Loeb at Harvard is careful to frame it as a possibility, but the math points to a singular conclusion. 3i Atlas is waiting. It has reached its destination. It is sitting at the Earth-Moon Lagrange point 2, a spot of gravitational stability where it can remain forever with almost no fuel. It is a parking spot in the sky, and from that parking spot, it has a clear view of everything we do. It sees the lights of our cities at night. It sees the thermal signature of our industries. It sees the chemical composition of our atmosphere changing year by year. It is a cosmic black box, recording the final chapters of a story that started with a spark in the mud. Tell me, as you drift into the deeper layers of rest, do you find the vastness of space comforting or frightening? Does it make your problems feel smaller, or does it make the world feel more fragile? I find that the older I get, the more I appreciate the insignificance. It is a gift. We are free to be small. We are free to sleep while the giants watch the horizon. Please, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me where you are listening from and how the stars look in your part of the world. Are they clear and cold, or are they muffled by the haze of human progress? Imagine standing on the surface of 3I Atlas. If you were to look back at Earth, you would not see the continents. You would see a marble of sapphire and cloud, flickering like a candle in a hurricane of black. You would see the thinness of the atmosphere, a layer of gas no thicker than the skin of an apple, which is the only thing standing between us and the eternal frost of the vacuum. From that perspective, the idea of borders seems like a joke. The idea of ownership seems like a fever dream. There is only the ship, and there is the void. 3I Atlas has seen the birth of stars that have already died. It carries the history of systems that never developed the complexity of a single cell. It is a witness to the sheer waste of the universe, the billions of light years of empty space that serve no purpose other than to be wide. And yet, here it is, in our backyard. It has chosen to stop here. Out of all the billions of stars in the Milky Way, it has found the one with the blue marble. This is not the randomness of a tumbling rock. This is the choreography of intent. We are currently 3,600 years from the last time a guest of this magnitude was recorded in our ancestral memory. That is a long time for a human, but it is a heartbeat for 3I Atlas. To the object, we are like mayflies. We live, we breed, and we die in the time it takes for it to adjust its sensors. But even a mayfly is a miracle of engineering. Even a mayfly is worth recording. As you drift closer to sleep, let the scale of the cosmos wash over you like a tide. You are not just a person in a bed. You are a collection of atoms that were once inside a star. You are a part of the same physics that governs the orbit of 3I Atlas. You are made of the same light and the same dark. There is no separation between you and the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself through a very specific set of eyes. The pattern of 3I Atlas is now repeating its low-frequency pulse. Every 14.2 minutes, a vibration ripples through the lunar crust. It is a slow, heavy sound, a bell ringing in the vacuum. Can you hear it in the silence between your heartbeats? It is a countdown, not to a destruction, but to an awakening. In just over 4 weeks, on October 29th, 2025, the object will perform its final maneuver. It will descend into a lower orbit. It will become a permanent fixture of our sky. Unfortunate timing for those who preferred the anonymity of the dark. But for you, the sleeper, it is a lullaby. It is the sound of the universe tucking you in. It is the assurance that the hallway is not empty. There is someone else in the building. There is a witness to your existence. And as you fall deeper and deeper into the dream, remember that you are being counted. You are being seen. You are being known. The scale of the universe is a gentle hammer, and tonight it is striking a very soft, very beautiful note. But that was only the view from the outside. There is another perspective, one that looks inward, toward the human reflection and the secrets we keep from ourselves. Let us go further. The hallway is long, the candle is flickering, and 3I Atlas is still there, silent and perfect, waiting for the morning that never ends. Close your eyes. Drift with the orbit. You are exactly where you need to be. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. a few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3I, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold, truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3I Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's dynamical systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looked strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3I Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep. Stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3I Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional, the kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking." Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical. The kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects. Artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3I Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3I Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from High-Rise contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3i Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, -150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3I, Atlas, isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new: faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it, it instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code, and 3I, Atlas, is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names: the immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3i Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together, a self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space, a wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11.2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3i Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let me start with something that should terrify every astronomer on Earth. On October 29th, 2025, just over 1 year after the initial detection, the European Space Agency released a corrected data set. They found that 3i Atlas did not arrive from the direction of Lyra like its predecessor, Oumuamua. It arrived from a coordinate of absolute nothingness, a graveyard of dead stars. This coordinate, located in a region of the Boötes void, is a place where the density of matter is so low that light itself seems to get lost on its way across the expanse. To find a high-velocity object emerging from such a vacuum is not merely a statistical improbability, it is a physical provocation. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University was the first to point out the thermal signature paradox during a late-night review of the mid-infrared telemetry. For an object traveling at 60 kilometers per second through the interstellar medium, the friction of even the thinnest gas should create a specific, predictable glow, a heat signature that betrays the object's history and composition. But 3i Atlas was cold. too cold. It was measured at 3 degrees Kelvin, almost absolute zero, despite being bathed in the radiation of our sun as it crossed the orbit of Mars. This isn't natural physics. This is activation. This is a heat sink working at 100% efficiency. It was hiding its heart from us, masking its internal energy behind a shell of perfect, artificial frost. But here is where it gets dark. When we look at the history of deep space observation, we are taught to look for light. We are taught that the universe is a theater of fire and radiation. But 3I Atlas taught us to look for the gaps. The first conspiracy whispered in the secure channels of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory involved the occultation event of November 3rd. As the object passed in front of a distant, stable star in the constellation of Sagittarius, the star didn't just dim as the physical body obscured it. The star vanished for 4 seconds longer than the physical dimensions of the object allowed. Think about that for a moment. An object roughly 800 meters in length, casting a shadow that suggests a diameter of several kilometers. This implies a field, a distortion of space-time, or a refractive shroud that extends far beyond the obsidian hull. It means that what we see with our telescopes is only the core of a much larger, invisible presence. The second conspiracy involves the lunar seismic sensors left behind by the Apollo missions. These instruments have been quiet for decades, occasionally registering the impact of a micrometeorite or the settling of the lunar crust. But when 3I Atlas made its closest approach, the moon rang like a bell for 12 minutes. There was no impact. There was no debris. It was a sympathetic vibration, a low-frequency resonance that suggests the object was projecting a beam of gravitational energy directly into the lunar mantle. It was as if something were scanning the moon, checking the basement of our cosmic backyard for the first time in 50 years. The third conspiracy is the most human and perhaps the most telling. It is the classified scrub. Within 6 hours of the lunar ringing event, 3 prominent amateur telescope feeds, located in Hawaii, Australia, and the Canary Islands, went offline simultaneously. These feeds were the only ones providing raw, unedited footage of the object's transit to the public. The official explanation was routine maintenance. Unfortunate timing. Those 2 words are doing a lot of work. When the feeds returned, the object had already shifted its orientation, turning its dark side toward our cameras. We were being told, quite clearly, that the public view was a privilege, not a right. What if the object isn't a probe at all? What if it is a beacon? In the world of deep-sea fishing, you don't chase the fish. You don't hunt them down in the darkness of the abyss. Instead, you drop a light, a single, glowing point of interest. Then, you sit back in the silence and wait for the curious to swim toward you. 3I Atlas might be that light. Our sudden surge in satellite launches, our high-frequency radio leakage, and our desperate attempts to photograph the object are all just the splashing of a panicked fish in the dark. We think we are the observers. We think we are the scientists performing a study, but we are merely confirming our presence to a watcher that has been waiting in the void for eons. The Hopi people have a prophecy of the blue star Kachina. They say that when a blue light appears in the sky and stays still while the world turns, the time of the great transition has arrived. They say the Kachina will take off its mask in the plaza before the uninitiated. We see this mirrored in the Egyptian records of the Red Phoenix, a star that appeared at the end of the Middle Kingdom to herald the collapse of the old order. These myths aren't stories to be told around a campfire for entertainment. They are survival manuals. They were written by people who lived through the last transit. People who didn't have the James Webb Space Telescope, but possessed a very long and very accurate memory of the sky. They knew that when the sky changes its rhythm, the Earth follows. They knew that the wild sheep of the stars eventually come home to the fold. You might think that space is too vast for such coincidences to matter. You might think that because 3I Atlas is millions of kilometers away, it cannot touch your life. But here is why you're wrong. Distance is just a measurement of time, and for an interstellar entity, time is a resource, not a limit. 3I Atlas has all the time in the universe. It has been traveling toward this specific coordinate since before our ancestors learned to sharpen stones into tools. It didn't come all this way just to miss us by a few thousand miles. It has been on a collision course with our consciousness for 3 million years. It is a slow-motion impact that is happening right now, inside your mind, as you listen to these words. I want you to think about the last time you felt a sense of déjà vu, that strange, electric feeling that you have been in this exact moment before, that you have heard this voice, felt this cold air, and looked at these same stars. Some theorists at the Institute for Advanced Study suggest that 3I Atlas emits a low-frequency gravitational wave that interacts with the human temporal lobe. It creates a ripple in our perception of time. Have you been feeling out of sync lately? Have the days felt like they were stretching, or perhaps like they were disappearing into a blur? Tell me your thoughts on this in the comments. I want to know if you feel the pulse of the traveler in your own timeline. We are currently counting down to December 14th, the date of the final transit, when the object will cross the ecliptic plane and begin its long journey back into the darkness. We won't be able to see it again until it completes its next cycle, hundreds of years from now. This is a moment of extreme scarcity, a window that is closing. If we miss the message this time, we have to wait for the next civilization to rise from our ruins and try their luck. Now, let me back up, because there is a detail in the European Space Agency report that was buried on page 412. It concerns the acceleration. As 3I Atlas moved past the Sun, its speed increased in a way that defied the standard solar sail model. There was no outgassing, no tail of ice, no jagged fragments breaking off. It was a smooth, silent surge, like a predator seeing its prey and deciding to close the distance. Dr. Avi Loeb of Harvard has been careful to frame this as a possibility of alien technology. He speaks of light sails and thin membranes, but even his caution is a form of tension. He knows that the data points to something that isn't just a piece of technology, but a piece of intent, an object that knows where it is going. When we look at the trajectory, we see that it isn't just heading toward the void. It is heading toward a specific point in space that will be occupied by the star system Alpha Centauri in approximately 40,000 years. It is a long game, a game where we are just a minor obstacle in the road. You are lying there, your breath becoming slow and rhythmic. You are safe in your room, shielded by the walls and the roof. But those walls are made of atoms that were once inside a star. And that star was once part of a cloud that may have been touched by the same energy that drives 3I Atlas. You are not a spectator to this event. You are a participant. Your curiosity is the fuel. Your awareness is the trigger. What if the reason we haven't found life elsewhere is because we are the only ones who aren't in on the joke? What if 3I Atlas is just one of thousands of such objects? A cosmic traffic pattern that we have only just begun to notice. We are like a child waking up in the middle of the night, seeing the headlights of cars passing on the highway outside, and thinking that each one is a miracle or a monster. In reality, it's just the universe going about its business, and its business does not require our understanding. Tell me, as you drift closer to the edge of sleep, do you feel the scale of it? Do you feel the weight of the 800 meters of obsidian and silence hanging over the world? Write your location in the comments. Let us map the reach of the observer. Let us see how many of us are awake to witness the shadow. The most terrifying thing isn't that we are alone in the universe. It's that we are being watched by something that isn't even trying to hide anymore. It's the arrogance of the flyby, the way it moved just close enough to be seen, but just far enough to be unreachable. We are not just spectators. We may already be part of the experiment, and the experiment is entering its next phase. But that was only one theory. There's another, one buried even deeper in time. Let's go further. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion fields still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3I Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3I Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, "and it remembered the lesson." As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened. Air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, When you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3I Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3I Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote. "It's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5. 3. The mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity, or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the web brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas web pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. The cosmos, wrote one witness, had finally learned to conduct itself consciously. After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the web. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas web had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice, each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, They spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for "please don't mention the heartbeat." But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that: the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, That feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland, it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, It began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3. Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: "If this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales." You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3 Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos. The beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3I Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i, Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old, reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened. Laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, it's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3. I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place, a mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice, numbers hum the universe's poise. We have traveled from the first awakening to the edge of the void. We have seen the hexagons, felt the body heat of a machine, and traced the Fibonacci curves of a visitor from Vega. But as the lights of 3i Atlas begin to recede, we are left with the only thing that remains: the quiet. It is not the silence of an empty room or the absence of noise. It is a dense, meaningful stillness. It is the kind of quiet that follows a profound revelation, the moment after the last note of a symphony has vanished, but the air is still vibrating with the ghost of the music. We are standing on the threshold of the great silence, and the view from here is breathtakingly empty. Do you remember the first act? The shock of the discovery, the iridium surface, the way the sensors at Mauna Loa flinched in the morning light. It seems so long ago now, doesn't it? Like a dream you had at the beginning of the night, a distant memory of urgency that has since been smoothed over by the passage of hours. The panic of the scientists, the headlines of the newspapers, the frantic searching of the skies, all of it has been swallowed by the steady, rhythmic pulse of the guest. The 15 anomalies have not been solved. They have been accepted. They have become part of the background radiation of being human. Think of the warmth, 37 degrees Celsius, 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, the heat of a heartbeat in the absolute zero of space. It is still there, moving away, carrying a piece of our collective attention with it. It is a lingering warmth, like the heat left on a chair by someone who has just departed. We are the ones left in the room, wondering what it was they were trying to tell us. Was the heat a greeting, or was it just the byproduct of a machine that was too busy to stay cold? What was the question we were trying to ask? Was it, why are you here? Or was it, who are we? Perhaps 3i Atlas was never an answer. Perhaps it was just a mirror held up to the dark, waiting for us to blink. And we did blink. We blinked, and in that millisecond of darkness, the object began its final departure. It is no longer a stadium in the sky. It is a diamond, a spark, a memory of a guest who has already said goodbye. The sky is returning to its natural state. The stars are fixed once more, no longer obscured by the sapphire glow of the visitor. The planets are orderly, moving in their predictable ellipses without the tug of an interstellar mass to distract them. The Igigi, the watchers who stayed awake while we slept, have closed their eyes. The great year has clicked into its next notch, and the gear teeth have settled into place for another 3,600 years. The appointment is over. The surveyor has moved to the next plot of land. You are very tired now. The weight of the world is a soft blanket, pressing down on you with a gentle, gravity-weighted affection. The weight of the stars is a soft breath, a cool wind, that moves through the corridors of your mind. Everything is in its right place. The calculus of your life is complete for the day. The observation of the universe has finished its current session. There is nothing left to solve. There is nothing left to prove. The 20-second anomaly. The final one is the way your own heart has slowed down to match the retreating pulse of the object. As 3i Atlas moves further into the dark, it takes the friction of our world with it. The anxieties of the 20th and 21st centuries are being carried away in its wake. It is a cosmic cleansing, a ritualized departure that leaves the planet a little lighter, a little quieter, a little more at peace. Unfortunate timing for the historians who wanted a conclusion. Those words are doing a lot of work as we realize that the only conclusion is the rest we are about to enter. Imagine the stadium of light, fading into a single point, a needle in the silk, a grain of sand in an ocean of ink. It is heading back toward the North Star of our ancestors, toward the blue-white fire of Vega. It will travel for 12,000 years through the silent dark, carrying the data of our heartbeat, the rhythm of our breathing, and the image of our cities. It is our emissary now. It is the story of Earth being told to the void. You are not just a person in a bed. You are a part of the message. Your stillness in this moment is the final data point. The observer effect is complete. By being watched, we have been stabilized. By being measured, we have been made whole. The recursion has ended, and the loop has closed. I wonder, as you drift on the edge of the final transition, where you will go in your dreams. Will you follow the object into the vacuum? Will you walk through the hexagonal gates and see the stars from the other side of the mirror? Or will you stay here, anchored to the earth, feeling the rotation of the world as a slow, rocking motion? Tell me, do you feel the silence as a void or as a presence? There is a dry irony in the fact that we spent so much time looking for life in the universe, and when it finally found us, it taught us how to be still. It taught us that the most important thing we can do is simply exist, to be a witness, to be a part of the great silence. The sapphire light has faded to a deep, resonant black. The lavender glow is gone. There is only the dark and the faint, distant twinkling of the stars that have always been there. The guest has left the house, and the house is quiet. The fire is out. The door is locked. Listen to the sound of the silence. It is the sound of the universe breathing. It is the sound of time passing without the need for a clock. It is the sound of your own existence, stripped of all the noise and all the distractions. It is a beautiful sound. You are safe. The pattern is holding. The cycle is secure. The next visit is 3,600 years away. You have plenty of time to rest. You have plenty of time to dream. The watchman has gone, but he left the lights on for us. If the universe is a dream, 3i Atlas was the moment the dreamer stirred. But now, the dream is deepening again. The waves are closing over the golden door. The ocean is still. The mirror is gone. Close your eyes. Imagine the void. It is not cold. It is not empty. It is a warm, dark velvet that holds you. It is the same velvet that 3i Atlas is currently gliding through. You are traveling together, even now, in and out. The great silence is not an end. It is a rest. It is the reward for the observation. It is the closure without the answers. It is the peace that surpasses the anomalies. The telemetry is dark. The sensors are at rest. The world is asleep. You are part of the orbit now. You are part of the deep time. There are no more questions. There is only the drift. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow. Good night.